Going to be putting this, yes, this will be put on YouTube afterwards so you can tell your friends to watch it. Welcome everyone to Final Girls Berlin Film Fest. This is the second annual Brain Binge. We've been doing the film festival since 2017, and always a part of that festival are talks and workshops. And we decided during COVID that we wanted to make this into an internationally accessible virtual event, and we're keeping that tradition going. Today we have Elle Marie Wood with us, who's going to give a talk on the horror of hair. So thank you so much for being with us. I'll just tell the viewers a bit about you. Elle Marie Wood is a two-time Bram Stoker Award and Rhysling nominated dark fiction author, screenwriter, essayist, and poet, with novels in the psychological horror, mystery, and dark romance genres. She won the Golden Stake Award for her novel, The Promise Keeper. She's a recipient of the MICO Award and has won Best Horror, Best Short Screenplay, and Best Action, Best Afrofuturism Horror Sci-Fi awards in both national and international film festivals. Wood has penned short fiction that has been published in groundbreaking works, including Sycorax's Daughters and Slay, Stories of the Vampire Noire. She is also part of the 2022 Bookfest Book Award winning poetry anthology, Under Her Skin. Her academic writing has been published by Nightmare Magazine and in the cross-curricular text Conjuring Worlds, an Afrofuturist textbook. She is the founder of the Speculative Fiction Academy, an English and creative writing professor, a horror scholar with a Ph.D. in creative writing and an MFA in speculative fiction, and a frequent contributor to the conversation around the evolution of genre fiction. So thanks so much for being here, Lisa. If you have questions for Lisa throughout the talk, you can either post them in the chat for us to read later, or you can also take part in the Q&A afterwards by raising your hand. So I'll hand the floor over to Lisa now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I'm looking forward to talking with you about the horror of hair because it's a topic that doesn't seem to get a lot of discussion or writing or movies or anything like that. And it's kind of surprising that that's the case. So here's my first foray into talking about hair. And I'm going to share my screen real quick. Hang on. Okie dokie. How do I make that smaller? No. Nope. I didn't mean to go down. I just want to make it smaller. Okay, as we wait for this to open itself up like a presentation. There we go. Okay, hopefully it says I'm sharing, so I'm going to get started here. So again, thank you so much for that introduction, Sarah. You took a lot of my second slide out of here, which is good. But I will just talk a little bit about myself. I don't know what I don't think I'm gonna have to refer to myself at all during this discussion, but Lisa, you know, Elle Marie Wood, all of those are my names. So my actual names, so you can use any one of them in conversation later. But I wear a lot of different hats. The first is that I'm a dark fiction author and I write within the psychological horror and the sci-fi, mystery, and dark romance genres. Predominantly psychological horror. So if you ever go looking for anything that I might have written, you'll find me there. I have 175 at this writing, but as of this morning, 190 short stories. I'm trying to run towards 200. We'll see how that goes. 3 novellas and an occasional poem. I'm also a screenwriter. I have about 5 feature-length screenplays and 6 shorts. And finally, since this writing, I have had my first short film my first short screenplay made into a short film, and it's in the festival circuit now, 271 Rayburn Avenue. And we're really, really, really proud of that one. Another hat that I wear is that I just studied, I'm a horror scholar. I've studied forever. I have a Ph.D. in creative writing, an MFA in creative writing with a focus in speculative fiction. I have an MA in English and creative writing with a focus in screenwriting, and I have a BA in communications with a focus in film production. I believe in closing the loop. Another hat that I wear is English professor. I am also a course director, a course creator, a textbook author, which was amazing to me. I can't even believe I can say that, but it's true. An essayist, a public speaker, a convention track director with Multiverse. I am frequently part of the conversation about horror and, just where we're going and where we've been and that kind of thing. And I'm a mentor with the HWA and the SFWA. So I like to do a lot. I like to be involved and engaged. And in doing so, it just means that I love this genre and I engage with it and engage with the people who like it as well. So that's me in a nutshell. So let's jump into hair. All right. Hair, ornament, source of power, source of beauty. Whether decoration or burden, hair is at the forefront of many cultures and has been part of the body consciousness of women since the dawn of time. Some cultures consider it a most prized possession, one that should be donated to the gods in thanks for favor. Others consider it a defining characteristic, one that speaks of a person's background, upbringing, and worth. While some have the freedom to work with it, styling, cutting, coloring, as they are so inclined, using it as a form of self-expression in as much as their clothing, as much as their clothing is, others are held to a rigid standard regarding hair and its maintenance. This curious inequality surrounding hair plays out in media, in business, in communities, and even in households. Bias colors perceptions and creates an other that is based upon an irreversible fact of nature, the way that hair grows from one's head. That separation, based entirely on nature, is a real construct that can be seen time and time again in marketing or media. And now the horror genre has given it a distinction that fits in more ways than one. Hair as sacrifice, hair as camouflage, hair as antagonist. The body horror subgenre deals with the terrors of the body. Often, this imagery is shown in the form of mutation and deformation, and usually leans toward the extreme. As I'm sure, your memory of late night B movies can attest, right? But there's a truth that the physical brings to the subgenre that cannot be ignored. Something that makes the audience cringe and move away while their eyes remain trained on the thing that's pulsating, the thing that's morphing, the thing that's ripping through the sinews and muscle fibers, pressing, cutting, tearing at smooth skin from within to get to the outside air. It is here where the concept of hair and what it's meant to women and men alike can be investigated, put on display, and challenged. Who knew? Hair adorning and their respective histories can be found in many cultures, as can the perceptions and rules surrounding what is deemed proper. Consider that many Asian cultures favor straight, neat hair, that Muslim women are expected to cover their hair to show modesty, that African American women wearing natural hairstyles to work is still a topic of discussion. Now, think about the Japanese onryo, whose long, unkept hair hangs loose in front of her face, a stringy web of dark strands until her ghostly countenance is revealed. Think about the meaning here, the truth that is perpetuated in this visual. The onryo is a ghost out for revenge, but for what? Made popular in mainstream cinema by heart-stilling characters like Sadako from The Ring or Kayako from Ju-on. The hair that covered their faces became as frightening as their crawling approach and the sounds that spilled from their ruined throats. But only a cursory address was given to why these souls remained in a state of unrest. These women were feared, even though their backstories spoke of abuse, torment, and murder. These images, the ones where something terrifying lives behind dirty strands, they are the ones that stick with us, not the plight that set her appearance in motion. The tradition of terrifying hair is continued with exte, hair extensions, which has the stolen hair of murdered women act as a homing beacon, calling the ghost who was in search of its retrieval. And the later release, let me say that again to be sure that we're hearing me. That first movie, Exte, Hair Extensions, is the movie about a murdered woman whose hair acts like a homing beacon. It calls the ghost who's in search of its retrieval. It's powerful. And the later release, Ekuste, which explores the idea of hair as a parasite, the hair growing wild inside a human husk, the body of a slain woman. Finally the slide comes. Because these images are so amazing, I think you should see them. So while the screen is here, I'll discuss that really quickly once more so you can see what I'm talking about. Exte, hair extensions. The hair is a homing beacon. And ekuste, where the hair grows wild inside a human husk, the body of a slain woman. That hair, of course, being sold for hair extensions later. In these examples can be seen the patriarchal importance of hair by making much of the horror of the converse. But what about when the hair is coveted? The movie Bad Hair taps into the importance that the African American community places on hair, whether we want it or not. It puts on display the undercurrent of bias and judgment that exists in the African American community around hair, how one represents themselves, and how that equates to status and worth in ways that have only been hinted at heretofore. It also brings to light the still relevant notion that straight hair is more palatable in the workplace and in one's personal life because the hair makes the wearer look and feel like a different person. This movie dives into the coveting of hair and what it brings, to include respectability, a love interest, and a higher standing at work. But all of this comes at a price. Pitting the natural hair community against the processed one, viewers are not only introduced to conflicts that they may never have known existed, but also meet a body horror rooted in spirit and forsaken promises kept in the hair to be perpetuated when worn again. And an incredibly poignant moment that has so many layers with symbolism and meaning that can't really or fully be uncovered in one viewing. The hair animates, sinking itself into a gaping wound to drink the blood found there. The hair, the desired silky tresses, it is the antagonist. The wearer, an unwitting host turned puppet. Movies outside of the horror genre have reflected the desire to change one's appearance that some women and girls have expressed using hair as the vehicle as well. Yolanda Mogatusi's short film, Hair That Moves, follows a young girl as she prepares for a singing contest, trying several hair products to straighten her natural curls and make them more pliable. Flat irons, rod sets, chemical straighteners that eat through metal. I hope you heard me, I'll say that again. Chemical straighteners that eat through metal. All of these methods are used on the hair of women from the African diaspora routinely as they search for the one product, process, savior that will provide them with straight hair. Others sew in, glue in, braid in hair from places unknown without a care for where the strands might have come from, in search of that desired look, regardless of what secrets it might hold. Hair willingly sacrificed as part of a Hindu tonsure? Who knows? Taken from captives in a hair farm? Unsure. The hows and whys of hair are coming to be, or rather, the hows and whys of hair are less important than its luster and the state of the ends. The descriptors of how the hair is treated during the quest for straightness, the burning of the scalp during chemical processing, the stripping of the hair follicle, the pulling of the strands into a tight coil upon which someone else's hair is added, treated with a needle and thread and sewn together. This speaks of horror in its finest form, transformation into the grotesquely beautiful, then put on display. This is body horror. And it is beautiful for a time, as the movie Bad Hair illustrates, until the consequences to the soul are tallied. Hair as fear needs little analysis once the above truths are recognized. As in the case of the Japanese and Malaysian ghost women whose hair hides their visages. Pardon me. Countenance is so terrifying that they induce death upon viewing. And the Southeast Asian Peachel Perry, who with her backward feet takes time to peek out from behind her long dark hair to eat the livers of children. Women's treatment of and decisions about their hair incite fear in those who witness and those who stare. The desire to be seen as beautiful, just like other people whose hair is naturally long, straight, and therefore worthy, is punctuated by the fact that they are not like those women, that they can never be, that they are different, in effect, other. They then become angry, something society thinks should be feared, much like Medusa's plight. Her tresses made monstrous in the form of snakes because of a perceived betrayal. The woman herself becomes secondary to her horror. Hair that turns into snakes, hair that grows from the host's eyes, hair that creates a portal within which a demon can materialize to claim another victim. Hair, bewitching, mesmerizing, captivating to all who lay eyes upon it. Beautiful, but don't touch it. It has teeth. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for listening to this. I'll stop my share so that we can talk.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for that fascinating talk. It felt like it really whet my appetite for even more deep diving into this theme. There's obviously so much here. If anyone has questions, you can feel free to either just turn your camera on or use the little hand raising function. Yeah, I was beginning to ask you this before we opened the Zoom room, but I was wondering about why this particular topic was something that called out to you.
I don't know. I'll be honest. I think that it's just there's not a lot out there about hair, and there's not a lot out there about women, right? I mean, from a general sense of the research and the movies and the deep dive is not happening for women in a general sense. But if you think about just body horror and extreme horror and just what those subgenres dive into, hair is rarely touched upon. And that just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems to me that hair, you know, is, I mean, if one were to write a proper story, hair could just reach out and choke someone if it wanted to. And I don't see how that's not happened. You know, I don't know why that's not happening more often than not. So I decided to look into it. When I saw the Ju-on movie series back in the early 2000s, and the hair, the sound coming from the back of her throat disturbs me as well. But the hair in and of itself was being used. At that time, I didn't realize that this was a specific ghost that, you know, that's used in a lot of different material and it's part of folklore. But it was used so well in that movie series. And then since then, I've only seen a couple of movies that have tried it, but nothing that did as well as that. It was utterly terrifying. I mean, and I just, for so long, anyone with long, dark hair, I was like, I just can't, I don't know, I don't trust them. And that's nonsense, but that's what you want from a horror movie. You want something that lingers, right? But everything else fell short. And so it made me wonder why, you know, hair is not part of the body horror canon and just being used more often than not. So I decided to do some research, and it was so much fun digging into this. So much fun. I could speak from personal experience as an African-American woman who's worn braids to work. You know, back when we were all going into the office, I wore braids to work, and it's just a hairstyle. You know, my braids didn't, at the time, I didn't have like a pink braid or a blue braid. I just had braids, just regular braided hair, long, you know, extensions, but braided, and they were tastefully done. It was pulled back or loose. It wasn't, you know, it was loose box braids, so you could do whatever you wanted to with them, as opposed to being cornrows attached to your head. And I would get looked at, and I used to think that's silly. You know, no one said anything about your fade, that you've cut your hair off at the bottom. No one's saying anything about that. Why are you looking at my hair? But again, it was part of life, and I didn't think about it. I've had hair relaxers, which is, yeah, I'm at the end of my relaxer now. I have worn more often than not natural hair in the past 5 years. And so I've had these different hairstyles, and I've noticed that there is a different reaction to me in different settings when my hair is a specific way. I don't wear wigs, but I know a lot of women who do, and we can change the wig up any way we want to change it on a given day. And there is a different reception. So it was just kind of curious, and we take all of those elements and put them together. And especially if you're just kind of thinking about writing something but not knowing where to go with it, it kind of made me think, well, this might be the topic to research. So, and you're right, this is the very beginning. I mean, I've got some really good history here, but what does it mean moving forward? Don't know. That's part 2.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Okay, so we have a few contributions in the chat here. Victoria says, I love the dichotomy of hair being treated as a source of a powerless woman's beauty, and these unkempt, horrific depictions of women reclaiming their personal power and boundaries.
Mm-hmm. What struck me, and thank you for that, what struck me was that I thought it was just a character at first, until the second time I watched the Ju-on movies. If you don't know what I'm talking about, The Grudge is the American version of the Ju-on movies. So if I were you, I would look at the Ju-on movies. The Grudge is nice, but if you want to be frightened, you watch the original. But the second time I saw Ju-on 2, I thought to myself, wait a minute, wasn't this woman murdered? You know what I mean? It was like it dawned on me, wait. She's not just haunting this house and terrifying me, right? Something happened to her, and this is what's going on. You know, there's a safety. She's trying to keep her child safe. And she was murdered, though. And so was the child. And so was the cat. The husband took out the entire family. And we're only focused on this hair in front of her face and her being so frightening. That's ridiculous. But her backstory disappeared. And I fell victim to it as well. I had no idea. I saw it. They mentioned it real quick. And then I forgot about it because she scared me. She is terrifying. And then I said later, I'm like, wait a minute, though. She has every reason to be terrifying. You know, she has every reason to be there, haunting that place. She should be angry. And we're focused on the wrong thing, which in general is how women are treated in society, right? Often people are focused on the wrong thing entirely. You want to focus on the outcome or our responses to something, or a misstep that someone may perceive, as opposed to why are we there in the first place? What are we angry about? What are we reacting inappropriately to that in your mind? What happened? Don't just be afraid of what happens now. Wonder what happened to get us to that point. So I don't know, that was very impactful to me when I was doing the research.
So do you feel like the hair was kind of used as this like masking agent that was deflecting kind of the source of horror?
Well, the hair, yes, because no one wants to look into the face of what occurred. So in one of the depictions of the movie, if you look directly into the face of the horror, the hair splits itself in half and a way to reveal her face. And upon looking at it, you die because you can't face it. So it's masked, it's covering the pain, it's covering the anger, it's covering the reason, and you don't die, or you might be able to escape. I don't know. That hasn't been explored too well yet. But if you don't look into the face of it, or if you don't, come to grips with what's actually occurring, acknowledging what happened, you can avoid it still. I think a lot of times women, we hide behind a lot of things, don't we? The makeup we put on, the clothing we wear, our silence is powerful. A lot of women these days, younger women, I sound like a really old person when I just said that. Yeah, these young girls, some of them go out and they seem to be just so much more, body aware, and or not so much aware. I think we were aware of ourselves, but they're just, I don't know, a little bit more comfortable with depicting whatever they want to depict and put out in the world than my generation might have been a little more reserved. But at the same time, the judgment still occurs. The power that a performer like Lizzo has. I remember I was listening to something just the other day about people being amazed that she could play the flute. Why? What are we talking about? Why are we amazed that this woman can play the flute? Because she wears revealing clothing on stage? Is that it? Because that's what it sounded like to me. You know what I mean? Why can't she claim her power and wear whatever she feels like wearing on stage? What's the bucket we're put into? Okay. And that's just one example. There's so many examples daily about women that we just don't pay attention to, even as women. We don't pay attention to them all. So this hair is just another thing that we hide behind to, either, or we use it as ornament to sort of deflect people from us. I mean, a lot of times if you take some of the really wild styles, let me rephrase and have you think of this. Go into any city during an afternoon. Okay, nice warm day when a lot of people are out, and just take a look, sit on a bench and just take a look. Okay, you have some women who are very confident walking around, they're beautiful, wearing their sundresses or their shorts or whatever they have on, and they look amazing, they feel good, and you can see it. Then you have the women who don't want you to talk to them. They don't want it, okay, at all. Think of the homeless woman who you've seen her before. She didn't look like she looked that day. She's done, she's wearing her things and she's out, but pay attention to her on a really hot sunny day, but she's still in the same space. Sometimes if you look, her hair is actually wild, her clothing is extra disheveled. Just look at her. If you've never looked at her before, that says something. That's not saying something about you, says something about society, but that's definitely something to think about. But if you look at her on that day and see if she's completely different, like she's something about her appearance is so obviously done to deter in people from bothering her, looking at her, addressing her in any way. It's often hair, it's often clothing. Have you noticed that ever? Anyone ever noticed that? Is it just me? There's a woman that is around that I can see often enough, and I see how she changes herself in certain situations. You have to wonder sometimes why that is. That's what she's hiding behind. So no one speaks to her. Right? No one says anything to her. They don't even take a second to jeer at her in that scenario, because they label her different things, for that day, especially. If they even notice they're looking at the same person, that would be a surprise to me. But in the world, women will hide behind what they think they can use to project, whatever wall they want to project. Exactly. I just happened to look down and see your comment, Victoria. Exactly. Camouflage and armor. Exactly.
A lot to go into here. There's a few more things in the chat, but I see a hand right now from Kat. I'm not sure if it's a direct comment on what we're currently talking about, then feel free to chime in.
Hi, and thank you for this. Yeah, I was thinking in terms of like hair not concealing something, but hair revealing stuff as well, because that made me think of Dark Water, which is kind of in the ballpark of The Grudge, because there's like hair not attached to a person, but sort of coming through the taps of this apartment building, like strands of black hair. And like, thanks for the connection with like the Japanese ghosts. I didn't know about that before. But that hair showing up gets her to investigate, and she realizes that the little girl has died in the water system that's haunting her. So in that instant, the hair is kind of like a revelation in a way, or like leads to some kind of insight. And then I was just thinking of hair being cut in films often, because that's like almost akin to like self-harm, and they're going off the deep end and start like there's somebody in front of a mirror and they cut it off, and either that's like to go into fight mode, kind of like a military type thing. In some films, I was just thinking of Marcella, which is a series, a British crime series, not technically a horror, but in that there's like a moment where she loses it and cuts her hair off, and sort of not a pretty way where they have like perfect like short hair after that, but like in a really unbecoming, awful way. So that's just like counter examples to like it being something that hides.
Agreed. No, I totally agree with you. Thank you for that. Dark Water is an interesting movie, isn't it? I've seen it a couple times, I can't tell what I think really, but it's a good. But you're right. For this example, it's exactly right. I think that the power of this stuff on our head, it's overstated in a lot of ways. I think, if I cut my hair, it doesn't mean I'm going into fight mode. I just cut my hair. You know what I mean? As a person who wears their hair short, I look at that kind of stuff and I'm always like, come on, guys, you're overdoing it now. It's time for the haircut. That's all, but the coloring, there's sometimes you color it and you see the person's got fire engine red hair and that's supposed to mean something. Or, they cut off, like they're wearing beautiful, like they've got these dreadlocks that are just long and have been growing for years, and they cut them off. There's a statement. Maybe, for movies and cinema, sure, maybe, right. But it's yours, it's ours. We can do what we want to do with it. That people tell us to do something with it and assign all these different reasons and, logic and what it means when we do these different things with it is amazing to me. That's a horror in and of itself, that we're not in control of what us handling our hair and what we put out into the world, having done so, what that means. We're not in control of that narrative.
It's like a trope, like it's
exactly.
like become a trope in popular culture. Like the hair cutting is kind of, you give up the pretty in order to be able to fight.
Exactly. And who says this, the long is the pretty? Like, isn't that crazy to you? It seems like, what is that? When I have long hair, my entire face just spreads and I look like I'm 15 years older. So I cut it off. For me, this is the pretty, but it's not viewed that way in the world. You're right. You made a perfect connection there. And why? Who says that? Is it just men or women perpetuating that? Some of us are.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a very, like my dad, when I was 15, I think, when I cut my hair off, or 13, and he wasn't having it. I had really long hair and then cut it really short, sort of a pixie cut, and he told me that I looked like a boy. And I got really upset. Sure. So yeah, that's where I think that still sticks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it sticks. And I think a lot of women have heard that. I've heard that before, that I look like a boy because I cut my hair off. And I'm like, look again, do I really? I mean, say that again. Say it again. Look me right in the face and say it. But it's the identity, because then we say to ourselves, well, I didn't, because I knew what I wanted to do. But then we say to ourselves, I don't know if I should have done this. How have I changed my value in the world by cutting off all this hair? We don't say anything when a man cuts his hair. Nothing at all. It's just hair to grow back. That's how I look at it. It's hair to grow back. If I want it to grow back, if not, I'll cut it off again. You know, it doesn't, it's a shame.
But we do say something when they grow it, like when a man grows hair long.
Well, that's true. We
They
sure
get
do.
comments.
We should, because especially if they pull it into a man bun, right? Now we've got a term called man bun, which is kind of like, what's wrong with long hair? Like, the hair used to be long, you know? They didn't just cut their hair off. So why do we have these? Why is it like this, that we ascribe all of these, you know, attributes to what being a man is like and what being a woman is like, and it has anything to do with hair at all? Very
Yeah,
simple.
in Germanic tribes back in the day, like the people who were, it was a marker of freedom to have long hair because you could have it long and it wouldn't get in the way of work.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a hand from Elif Osbe. In case it's related to the current discussion, feel free to turn on your camera and your mic.
My screen is shifting a lot. Hi.
Hi. Actually, when the talk was about long hair versus short hair, it really made me think of, I mean, I have long hair. I've got the long black hair, and the reason why I have long hair is because when I was at Islamic boarding school, I eventually befriended someone who, when she uncovered her head for the first time, I saw how long her hair was, and it was reaching her knees.
Oh, wow.
And I asked her why it was this long, and she said, well, when I'm buried in Muslim tradition, you don't go into a coffin, you know, you get this like sort of a cotton fabric around you. And she said, when I die, I want my hair to cover me. So I want my own materials to cover me when I go into the ground. And I thought that was so poetic and so beautiful, that I just decided, okay, yes, I'm gonna grow out my hair as well. I've never been able to get it as long as hers, but I thought that that was such a beautiful sentiment. And I also put some tech, like I wrote some comments in the chat, but something very vampiric about hair that is so interesting, because it's like one of the last things all that is decomposed in the earth. So she really thought about it in a holistic way. So I just wanted to add that to the conversation
That's very unique.
as a supporter of long hair.
That's so unique. Wow. I don't think I've ever heard that before, like as an explanation for long hair. Wow. I don't think my hair will never, that's never going to happen. Like I can get it to here and that'll take 10 years, but I don't think I could get it down to my feet so it could wrap around me. How interesting.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It also pertains to our earlier topic of postmortem grooming and beginning there. There are so many comments and questions in the chat, so I just want to quickly, I want to make sure I'm attending to part of that. Kelly says, do you think there has been an increase in hair-focused horror in the last decade, and do you think that's tied to increased demands for ending policies that police how hair can be worn in different settings?
You know, I'd say yes, there's been an increase, but there's not a lot anyway. There was hardly anything in the 80s and 90s, right? Now we've got a couple. I don't think that, so it's progress, sure. But I don't think that anyone at all would ever categorize what we have now as a lot. You know, it's not really written in fiction. It's shown on film every now and then. But I think that it's such a powerful thing that, you know, I don't know why we're not using it in body horror. It really could be used for a lot more. The policies to end how you wear your hair, that's a newish thing, I'd say, you know, because when I was working in an office, it would be 90s and 2000s. I went to the working at home thing long before COVID happened. So you know, but so if I'm having that issue in the early 2000s and the 90s, I don't know that the movies connect to when things were starting to change for the hair in the office thing. And I can tell you today, hair in the office is still an issue for, at least I can speak on African-American women. If you just can't, natural hair worn in any way. I mean, I normally have like a just very short curly, you know, hair. And that's still whenever I've had to go into a meeting in the office, since that's what would be the only reason I've gone in recently, it's still looked at, as though, it's like, oh, it's not well, I don't want to put words in their mouths and say they're saying, oh, it's not straight, so that's unusual. Not going to say that, but I'm going to say that whatever my hairstyle had been at that moment was unusual enough in their minds for the office space. So I don't know that there's a connection with the laws being, trying to be enacted to change how hair is worn or any governing towards it in relationship to the movies, or the media. So I can't make that connection. I wish I could though.
Just keep going down the chat. Then there's a comment from Elif who said, it's interesting also how hair cannot be broken down so easily when buried. I think it's one of the last things that get broken down by the earth due to keratin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then we have Ori, who says, I love your point that the Black hair experience is inherently body horror. Do you have any thoughts on the Black Southern practice of burning hair to prevent someone from using it against you in root work, and how it pertains to that real life horror?
I don't. I will make the comment that I think that there are a lot of things that happen, in specific practices. I'll put it that way, because I don't know enough about any individual practice. There's a whole group of people that I can't name them. It starts with a G. They are in the South, but they're on the marshes, and it's they do a whole lot of different things than what the folks on the mainland would do for root work. Thank you. Gullah Geechee, and I don't know enough about them. I just know that they exist and that they do different things. So the burning of the hair, I think from what I remember, could be the same as the burning of something, or the handling of something that is the individuals and inherently the individuals. So the hair obviously grows from our heads, the nails come from our body, flesh, of course. So you want to be able to get something from them. Hair is easiest, right? You get it out of a hairbrush or a comb or whatever, and you can keep moving. So I just think that is more of there could be some things connected to it, but I don't know that it's practical to consider that it's only related to hair. I think it's mostly related to body, something connected to their body or from their bodies.
And Ori, if you have any thoughts on this or info to share about this practice, you're more than welcome to chime in, turn on your mic, and so on.
And see, as a Northerner, I'm from New York originally. I did not know about the Gullah people at all. I hadn't heard about them I'm not in New York now, but it was like I was an adult when I heard about, some of these different practices and some of the people who are doing things differently because they're on the different areas on the mainland. And I it's mind blowing. I think there's so much there.
Next,
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hey guys, I guess I can add something. So I agree with you. I think that, as far as burning items, I'm from the South, so I've heard that they did burn a lot of things, but I just always thought it was interesting that hair specifically was something that had to be burned. And I don't know if it's intentional or just a correlation that, hair is so powerful within the community. And not only is it something that we can use it to give ourselves power, but people can also use it to have power over us. And historically, hair has always been something that, regardless of how we consider it or how we adorn ourselves, like we said, we're still facing laws and, administrative things where hair is just, people can use it against us no matter how much we love it ourselves.
Right. Oh, definitely. Definitely. I would say that is true of just the body consciousness in a general sense. I mean, our bodies are different, and I think that can be used, it's weaponized against us. I mean, I think, clothing manufacturers definitely don't necessarily take into account all the different shades, if you will. I hope I said that as I want to be candid about it, but I don't want to be, disrespectful in terms of how I state that, but I think that I wrote down a note to look up this hair burning thing because I'm curious. I'm definitely curious. I want to find out for sure. But I personally think that bodies, all of the body is a free game, open game for people to use against any specific group that they're targeting.
All right, I'm going to continue with the chat. There is, Elif says, there is also a bunch of Victorian techniques about using hair as a tool, but also as a material to make ornamental and decorative pieces like rings to remember someone who passed, for example. So hair lockets somehow make me think about how vampiric hair can be as like an eternal element.
Take a look at that movie Bad Hair. When it sucks the blood, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. It's perfect. It's perfect. Perfect connection to what you're saying.
Jen Tyler says hair being cut as renewal of self or almost a baptism is also an interesting visual in addition to the self-harm / fight mode aspect. This harkens back to the earlier discussion. Got a talk from, a comment from Abigail Whittle, who gave the last talk on practical effects, women's contributions to practical effects makeup. There's an interesting horror short that you may have already come across from Mariama Diallo. We talked about this earlier.
Yes. Yep, I have that written down. Hairwolf.
Exactly. She went on to make the feature film Master, which is great. And yes, the short is called Hairwolf. Abigail left a link in the chat so you can actually watch it online. I believe it's available for you to watch now.
Fantastic.
All about hair and cultural appropriation. Yes, so this is a great film. We screened it a few years back at Final Girls as well. Next comment is...
Thank you for that link.
Victoria says, there is insidious gender pressure tied to hair length. In my younger field biologist days, female biologists who worked with longer hair or that wore makeup in the field were perceived as less serious, as if maintaining a femme appearance made them less competent in a masculine-dominated field. Yep. Jen Tyler. Sorry, no, maybe I don't need to be reading every single comment. Sorry about this, but I'm just...
No, if I can make a comment real quick to that, the one that Victoria just mentioned, it is true of every field. It is true of every field. When of course, I don't wear a lot of makeup, so I don't run into that makeup piece very often. But when I have just, because you can do flat and that makes me look a little more serious. If I just let it stand up and be curly or wavy like it will look later in a different setting. Today I'm Dr. Lisa Wood because that's what I wrote in my presentation. Later on, I'm just gonna be Elmarie Wood, so it'll be curly, right? But when I do that, people do not buy my title at all. Dr. Lisa Wood, no, they don't buy it. Somehow they buy it like this. They do not buy it the other way. I don't get it. I don't get why hair, because in that this looks shorter than it will look later when it's standing up more. And the relationship to that is so incredibly strange. To be taken seriously is to be more masculine. To have short hair is to be more masculine. And it's a whole different, like that would be part 3 of the research, right? I mean, that's something else we'd have to dive into, why that is where we're going and why we as women are letting that be what we're taking. Like we can't, at some point we've got to fight against it. Stop trying to figure out the whys and stop letting it live. Make sense? I don't know. I think that for me, I have always bucked that system. I wore the braids to work. I didn't care about the looks. I wear my curly to work, and when I have to go to a meeting, if I do a Zoom, I wear the curly if I have to. I wore pantsuits long before this. I'm much older than a lot of folks, but so I wore pantsuits to work when that was not accepted at all. At the time I was a project manager, and so I would have to go into these either government agencies or IT companies and businesses and have these meetings with the suits, if you will. And I was wearing a suit, and that was not acceptable. And I would get the stares. I'd love the suit with the braids. That was one of my favorite combinations. And I would get this look of like, who is this? Because I've always looked. I know if anyone who knows me knows that I'm 50. I tell people that, they don't believe me because I don't know what 50 looks like. But I think it's all an aura, and I don't come off like, when I was growing up, 50 was like 90. They were young. They were tired from all that work they were doing, and it was hard. There's a stage of really hard labor in the US, and I think that, you know, definitely the people that I knew were involved in that, so it took a toll on their appearance. It's not the same for me at the moment, thank goodness, knock on wood. And I'm saying that either I'd be looked at as a kid, you know, even though I was a full-grown adult, or not serious. So I leaned into it. If I can't make you see me and respect me as the person that I am, I'm just going to continue to present myself the way that I want to present myself, which is with short hair and in a pantsuit, or whatever it is, and not worry about what the perception is, if that makes sense. So interesting point that, you know, we're not necessarily respected, even though we've got all the same, you know, history, education level, in some instances more than the guys that are looking at us like we're not serious, and it's so frustrating.
Absolutely.
By the way, you know, I get that for horror fiction too, right? I just want to be clear about that. So my doctorate's in creative writing, right? But I'm a horror author, so they still look at me like I'm not quite serious. I'm like, really? Okay.
Yeah, so many different forms of undermining at play here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a pretty unrelated question about hair, which is like, what do you think about kind of the treatment of cut hair or loose hair as something abject? Like if you see hair in the drain, or something about something about hair that is separate from the body that people respond to with revulsion.
I don't know, yeah, because I think it's dead. You know, hair's dead, right? It's not. That's the you know, we talk about dead ends, dead, but the hair itself is dead. So is the nail. So it's like waste. I think. I don't think anyone's thinking of it that way consciously, but I think that people are thinking that something's shed from them, and so it's discarded, and that we ignored this and left it for someone else to see. So it can be perceived as unclean, it can be perceived as unkept, I can't speak at all, sorry. And waste being left for someone else to clean up. So when and nails, I mean, I don't like to see anyone's cut fingernails, shavings, that's kind of disgusting to me too. But the hair, we all know that hair can just come off of you. You could have washed your hands and turned your head and shedding occurs. And no, I don't think much about hair, but people do, you're right. And I think it's just because inherently it's just something that can come off. It was attached to you and now it comes off, and it's waste, and you're just ignoring it. Like skin, like if you found someone's peeled skin in the sink or something, or on the counter in the summer after you've been, and maybe that inherently we are having a visceral reaction to it because there is power in something that we possess now being discarded. However, maybe it's been trimmed, maybe it fell out, whatever. It's discarded, it's here left behind, and we're gone, but the thing is left behind. Maybe there is a power in that. I don't know. It's a curious question. Nice, Sarah. I don't know. It's a good thing to think about, because as horror authors, if any others of you are here that are horror authors, you could be thinking about, what about these things that are left behind after we're gone? The skin cells. I mean, skin's kind of gross, but it's summer, right? So you get the sun and we peel it right off of us. And then folks do leave things like that, right? What does that mean? Why would hair be one of those things that makes you go, yuck? We all have hair, men, women, both have hair. So why would that be so gross?
I think it's all part of this reminder of our mortality, right? In some
because
sense.
it's dead, exactly. It's also waste. I think that people would have the same reaction to, because it also depends on what kind of hair we're talking about. Let's not to be gross here, but hair from your head is not going to give the same reaction as hair from elsewhere. And if you see other types of hair, I don't know of anyone who's not going to go, that's nasty, because everyone can tell exactly what kind of hair we're talking about, right? It looks different and different texture altogether. So I wonder if there's a power in that. All right. I got 2 story ideas today. Thank you.
but is it necessarily nasty? Why? Why is that? You know, I mean, there's questions about that as well. I don't know if we should take it for granted that it's nasty, right?
I don't want your, because what I think for me, my question then becomes, especially if it's not the hair on your head, why would that be out on this sink right here? Like what, what's happening that this is on the sink? And so therefore it could be nasty. I don't know. It all depends upon where we are, right? I mean, I guess the scenario of where did I see the hair? Where did I see whatever shaving or mucus? I mean, we've all seen. That's gross too. I don't know. I think that perhaps I think it's waste. I think in the end of it, to answer the question, I think the issue is the fact that it's waste and that it's come from your body and been left behind, and that can be off-putting.
Yes, the boundaries of the body are not as clean and unified as we like to think, right?
Right.
Okay, we have another comment from Kelly. Some folks might be interested in the web series Professional Black Girl by Yaba Blay. It highlights ways that Black women and girls are being their most authentic selves through hair, makeup, and other parts of adorning and caring for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Professional, not as in workplace ideals, but professionals like being themselves 100%. All right, thank you for that recommendation.
Nice, yeah, thank you.
Louise says, yes, I was actually going to ask about that. Did you come across body hair other than the hair on the head, like facial hair, pubic hair, etc.? And it being abject/horror, and maybe the gendered, racial, ethnic aspects of that. Okay, yes, that's an important aspect to
That's true. That's true. No, I have not. That was not part. I wonder if it's because I didn't come across it just in my research, but I wonder if I would have needed to look specifically for it. That's a good point. I did not even look for it, consider it. I was so focused on the hair on the head, but yes, yes. You know, the way that we treat hair, the way that we treat grooming, anything about the body is so different culturally that I think it's important that we recognize the distinctions. And I wonder if there's a horror component to that. I wonder if it could be, or at least some sort of conclusion drawn to be able to make something bump in that sphere. Interesting.
Keela or Kyla, also apologies to anyone whose name I've mispronounced throughout this whole question reading process. Kyla or Keela asks, related to the power of hair left after someone's gone or passed. This is a comment, not a question. There's a poem called Married by Jack Gilbert about religiously collecting his wife's hair after she died. I'm curious about that as well now. I'd like to read. Jim Taylor points to Louise's comment, brings to mind the white bully girl from The Craft comparing Rochelle's hair texture to pubic hair. Yeah, this scene is like absolutely horrible. Like we can all remember seeing that and being like completely outraged, but of course it's normalized in this kind of 90s casual racism.
Right. And I would say that now things are better. You know, I don't know. I will say that I don't know that they're better. I think that they're just not blatant, right? I think that we're not putting it out there in the world actively. There was a moment here in the States, and I don't remember, God, was it North Carolina or South? I'm not really sure, but this was a few years back. It has nothing to do with hair. I'm just going to make a context, but a few years back, there was a Confederate flag being raised at one of the state capitals. I can't remember if it was North Carolina or South Carolina. You know, that has meaning to Black people in America. So but it was raised at a government building, and the next day, people felt, oh, it's great, we can show our flags as well. And everyone, like, and you go to these different stores, like I'm talking about regular Target, supermarket, etc. You go in the parking lot and suddenly there's a flag. You see it on the back of their car. You see it, you know, just whereas I live in a small town. You see these same people all the time. You didn't see that the other day, right? I mean, you know, people you knew didn't have that flag flying in front of their house 2 days ago. But then when it was given, you know, approval, if you will, by this government building doing so, they now have this flag flying. And initially, you know, we were outraged. I say we, my family, my house, we were outraged. But then we're like, you know, because the problem is you assume things are gone. You assume that people accept. You assume that people aren't looking at us and saying, oh, they're so different, this, that, and the other. But it lives still, you know. So someone somewhere is telling their children or having a conversation in their house about the texture of someone's hair. This is still happening. It just isn't showing on television or in the movie as blatantly as that. Okay, someone still has whatever considerations, because I mean, history aside, the Confederate flag means something to, like I said, means something to Black people who, you know, live in the United States. So you could say, okay, this is just history, but knowing that that's not the way that anyone takes it, you know, you have to make a decision whether or not you're going to bring this and talk about it outwardly, openly. And so I say, it seems that things are different. Maybe things are better. It's just not so blatant anymore, but that doesn't mean it's gone. So I think that that's a very important part, a very important point that people need to remember, is that racism exists, and no one can decree it gone and say that it's wiped out of everyone's mind. That's not the way life works. That's not the way people work. So, and I don't know what's better, what's worse. It's just, I think it's hidden.
Very true. Any other last comments, questions?
I can tell you, I enjoyed this conversation thoroughly. Thank you for your comments and your posts and your questions. That was some cool stuff. I have a movie to watch. I've got some new stuff to research. You know, body hair, that is something I'd never considered. So there we go. Body hair and trimmings and skin. Interesting. Waist. I'm looking forward to that research.
We also approached the question earlier before we let people in about whether or not body hair grows after we die.
Oh, yes.
Discovered the truth that it's actually the skin receding. So I just,
and you've got to moisturize, and they will moisturize for you when you're gone. I mean, like, oh, that's just horrible. That's just, I don't know. That's nasty. I'm still having a reaction. My skin is still like, that's vile. I mean, it's just, again, my comment is this. Then I always tell people, yeah, I mean, just because I'm a psychological horror author doesn't mean that we walk around like I don't walk around like Elvira. Some of us do, right? But that's not my persona. So things actually do still scare me, and like legitimately scare me. And this whole after death thing, I won't know what's going on in there. If they're moisturizing me because they don't want my hair to look like, you know, then I won't know it. So I just didn't need to know it ahead of time. But now all of us know.
So lots of people in the chat are saying thank you so much. They want to check out more of your work. Thank you for your wisdom and insights. So thank you so much, Dr. Elmarie Wood, for being here and giving us so much to think about. And thank you all for participating in the discussion. It was a super illuminating conversation. So please stick around. We have a bunch more stuff coming up at the Brain Binge. Next up at 6 is Extremity and Intersectionality, The Agony and the Ecstasy with Ariel Basca and Rabia Satabi. And after that, we have a talk by Annie Rose Malamut on the lesbian vampire and leather ritual, which, yeah, both of these should be super fascinating, engaging talks, and then 4 more talks tomorrow as well. So yes, and as well, we have an in-person festival in February. So if you feel like coming to Berlin, then we will be here in person on February 8th to 11th with short films and long films and more talks and workshops. So, and we also do some best of screenings. That's the final thing. So if you want to find out where you can watch our films in your city, you can follow our posts on social media and on our website, and we might be somewhere not so far away from you. Thanks again, Lisa. And yeah, we'll
thank you.
Here. Take care,
Thanks, everybody. This was so cool. Thank you so much.